I'm working on building a custom subwoofer enclosure for 4 audio control Spike 12s, and in this video I run into a huge issue. If you've been following along with this project, in the last video I did all the woodworking to make the pieces for this enclosure. And now in this video we have to get everything assembled. What tips and tricks can we learn along the way, and will I have to start over due to that issue? Hey everyone, I'm Mark. Welcome to CarAudioFabrication, the channel where together we learn how to master car audio and how to design, build, and install our dream car audio system. Let's get into it. Before we can assemble the enclosure, one of the things that I want to address is painting the inside of this port. This port is rather large and it's going to be really easy to see down inside of there, and I don't want to have to rely on trying to rattle can inside the port once everything is assembled. I'd rather do it now prior to assembly. Since I know all the dimensions internally of the port, what I can do to prepare is carefully mark out each of these locations because I only want to paint where the port is actually going to be. I want to try to avoid painting the surface where one board is going to connect to another because I want to have a good wood glue bond between those two different pieces. So now that I have all my boards marked out, I've got everything laid out on some cardboard here just to protect the floor, and I'm going to be using some simple flat black paint along with a roller to paint these. Now once I started the painting process, I did decide that I wanted to apply some painter's tape as well to have some nice crisp lines. I also used a brush here on the baffle to paint the inside edges of the port along with the surrounding areas that go around the subwoofer cutout holes. I did this because the finish that I'm going to apply is going to go on this outer surface, and I want to have a nice, perfectly smooth surface for where the gasket of the subwoofer sits down and seals against the baffle, so I used the paint in that area there. I know that right now this looks a bit messy, but once we add the rest of the black texture coating around the outside of the enclosure here, it's really going to all come together. Now that I have all the flat black paint applied, I'm just going to allow ample time for it to dry. Now while that's drying, I want to show you guys this and do a quick shout out to our show sponsor, Audio Control. I'm building this enclosure for 4 of the Audio Control Spike 12s, but of course when you need to power subwoofers, you're going to need a subwoofer amplifier. A great choice for this would be an Audio Control LC series subwoofer amplifier. Depending on your system, you're going to want either the LC-1.800, which does 800 watts RMS, or the LC-1.1500, which does 1500 watts RMS. What makes these amplifiers unique though is the additional features that they have. Of course, they're going to have a crossover frequency that we can select, but they have the unique AccuBass control, which is an Audio Control specific feature, which allows us to restore some of the bass on a factory system if we're using the factory system for signal. There's other features like the GTO signal sense. This allows us to not have to connect a remote in connection in order to tell this amplifier to turn on. And there's also a unique feature like the source clipping and the gain maximized light, which allows us to set up this amplifier properly. There's much more to talk about on these though, so if you guys do want to learn more, check out my full overview videos linked down in the video description. All right, everything is now dry, so we can start the assembly process, and the main points to take away here are to use a high quality wood glue, and in my case I'm going to be using a brad nailer in order to clamp everything together while this glue dries. Cue up the build montage. So now that I have the bottom and 3 of the sides attached together, I'm going to start letting that dry, and in the meantime I'm going to start assembling the port pieces. I'm essentially going to make a sub-assembly out of this first port wall, the second port wall, and the brace. Those are all going to be attached to each other, and then they will go into the enclosure together. Another quick little trick for you, you can cut pieces of wood that are the same dimension as the port in order to properly space the port during assembly. So if you go back and watch the design phase of this project, you'll see that we discovered that these 45-degree corners were going to be in the way of the holes during our design process. The reason for that is in order to fit the 4 12s within this footprint, everything had to be really compact and close to the edges. I've had this happen on enclosures before, and there's a simple solution to correct this. In my case, I'm going to be using this, which is called a top bearing flush trim bit. You'll see that there's a bearing right here, and what that will allow me to do is ride that bearing along the cutout hole and then transfer that cutout shape to this piece here. This is definitely going to create a lot of dust, so I have a dust collection tube right here ready to suck it away. Now, what if you don't have this bit though? What you could do is hold the 45s in here, don't attach them yet, and scribe a line with a pencil, take the 45s out, and then carefully cut away as much of that material as you can, but don't cut up to the line. Save just a little bit of material, attach these in, and then you could just hand sand the rest of the material away. Hand sanding obviously takes a little bit more time, but it can be done. Let's bust out the router. So here it is, guys. After we make that cutting pass, you can see we have a nice, smooth, perfectly matched surface on that 45 that matches up with the cutout holes in each of these locations. So now we have perfect clearance for the subwoofers to go in without running into that corner. At this point in the project, we just have the one more face that needs to be applied here to close off the rest of the enclosure. To do that, we'll of course be following the same steps that we did in the rest of the video, where we apply the glue, clamp everything down, and then use brad nails to secure it in place. Now in the next video, there's a few detailed things that I'm going to want to address. First of all, since we plan on doing a paint texture coating on the outside of this enclosure, I'm going to want to use a wood filler to fill up all these small little brad nail locations. I also have some additional router work I want to do on the outside edges of this enclosure and a little bit of fine sanding to do, and then we're going to move on into the coating. To see the rest of this project, be sure to check out that next video, and I'd love to have you as a subscriber. Next time you're in need of a subwoofer amplifier, be sure to check out the LC series of amplifiers from our show sponsor, Audio Control. Learn more down in the video description. A special thanks to them, along with Juan, Jerry, Steven, and the rest of the Patreon membership team. A big thanks to all those guys for making these videos possible, and of course, thank you for tuning in and watching.